Well, hello everyone. Hello. Yes, at the end of the last session, I did promise you that I would recount the battle short of the Palel Road, which we fought for the village with no name, which I'm still struggling to remember. And I am going to take you back to that fateful day, among my many other fateful days, and just try and recount, with the aid of the marvelous invention that is the game of Upfront, to try and recreate for you that I'll call it Tojo's special speed bump by which he was trying to hold up the advance. Um, Please forgive an old fellow, my memory may in places be a bit squiffy, but I shall do my best to give a true and accurate account of my boundless heroic, completely unbiased account of the events of the day. Now, I just want to give you a little bit of a background because really it all started off like the last few days had gone. We'd been advancing down what was a pretty decent road by Burmese standards at the time. Um, Although, despite that, and also despite the fact that I was rejoicing in the fact that we were actually in what you could consider clear terrain for Burma and India, at any rate, or at least that part of the border. And I was, for some reason, I was in a foul mood. And I suspect it was due to my sixth sense, which told me that the going had been good for a little bit too long. As I say, I'd had the dubious joy of mixing it up with the Japanese in this theatre before, and if there's one thing I've learned, it never does to let your guard down. And so it proved. The lovely, cheerful East African chaps with whom I was hitching a ride were trundling along quite happily when in the distance we heard the sound of gunfire, and I was thinking, oh no, what's going on now? At first, I tried to, let my natural optimism hope that it was just some, pathetic motley of half dead Japs that the forward units were just clearing out of our way. But no, as we drew up closer to the sound of the firing, we began to pass wounded stragglers in Commonwealth uniforms, and I started thinking, oh God, I know what's coming. Sure enough, a rather harried lieutenant runs up to our universal carrier and taps on the side and says, I'm terribly sorry, gentlemen. I'm afraid there's a slightly more than usually determined bunch of Japanese up ahead, and they've rather inconveniently positioned themselves across the road. You're going to have to go in there and clear them out. And we thought, yay. Or at least outwardly we thought yay. I'm not quite sure what the East Africans thought of this. I've got to hand it to them. They always seemed up for a fight. And because it seemed the done thing, I plastered on my big heroic grin and said, oh, yes, that should be all right. We'll have that done in a few minutes, won't we? Now, I was tagging along with someone else's squad, of course, and the sergeant seemed a nice enough, tolerant chap. He didn't seem overly bothered by my heroic reputation, which was good because while I'm in someone else's care, I don't want them making tactical mistakes through a bad case of hero worship or overawe. But at the same time, it was very clear that he was running this squad and I was very much a passenger. Now, that suited me just fine. It's always a good position to be in because if you're just a passenger effectively acting as a squaddy, then you don't need to take any consequences if it all goes belly up. There are times when it's really not a good idea to be in command. And so, as we sighed tiredly, well, I sighed tiredly, the others, as I say, seemed a bit up for it, kept it to myself, of course, unslung my trusty sten and leapt out of the carrier with the others and prepared to move up the road. And so here we are. We have the fairly open terrain in front of us. Now, the Japanese are up there. This is all with the benefit of hindsight, of course. At the time, we had no idea what was in front of us, but we had a pretty, good idea that they wouldn't send us up here unless we could deal with it, right? Right? Anybody? Oh, never mind. But yes, I felt that we could take it. The only thing was I had to be very careful because I'd been through enough narrow misses already. And if there was one thing I was absolutely certain of in this time and this place, it's that I wanted to live to celebrate Christmas Day 1944, and I wasn't going to let a bunch of crazy Tojos stop me. So as the men moved out, I did my usual stunt of making sure that I tucked in close to the most heavily armed group. Notice my friend with the Bren over here. But of course, make sure that you're sort of near to the front, but also hanging around near the back. It is doable, It takes a bit of practice, but you achieve this nice thing where you look like you're not fronting yourself too much because you don't want to steal the sergeant's thunder. After all, this is his squad. I'm just along for the ride. But at the same time, you want to project the heroic image of the man who wants to really get up and at him. And so off we trot. And as we get closer to the sound of the firing, and we pass more wounded soldiers from our side, I'm beginning to become even less sanguine than I was a few minutes ago. But there's no help for it now. And as we consider our options, now we really want to nudge these fellows to one side just to clear the road. We can either break the squad or if we can push up to what they call relative range 4 in these turns and get ourselves into cover, then we can effectively hold the road to the village open. Now, my normal preference in these situations is to go to ground, report the fact that there's at least a company in front of us, heavily armed with mortar support, and then let the 3.7 inches and the RAF deal with them and then go and round up the survivors. Unfortunately for me, it wasn't my call, and again, it wasn't my squad. And for all his other obvious qualities, the sergeant seemed to want to do this the old-fashioned and rather direct way. So again, looking at our options, which weren't bad to be honest, he decided the best way forward would be for the infantry to push ahead while the universal carrier gave us cover with its guns. So off we went. Group A trotted off, and not drawing any immediate fire from the Japanese, we decided we felt confident enough to follow. So as the men jog off, I go tagging on, maintaining my position close behind, but not too far forward, not too far forward. Watch that spacing. Now, the one problem that I always moan about when it comes to the universal carrier is that it doesn't really have much by way of personal protection. And it's really not got any great shakes when it comes to armament either, because that's a very nice big firing card over there. But unfortunately for me, at this distance, its machine gun force points are absolutely pitiful. However, the great temptation in the hope of getting a lucky shot is that they might be able to pot one of the Japs with the anti-tank rifle. And for want of anything better to do, they decide this would be a terribly good idea. I mean, it's covering fire, isn't it? Even if it's utterly ineffective. So they decided in their wisdom that they were going to expend this, taking a shot with the boy's rifle. And they were going to try to aim for where we thought we heard the Japanese machine gun firing from, which was roughly in the center, probably among the enemy's squad up there so far. Now, we were just about to draw a bead on them. Very difficult shot. We need to draw a random number of 6 at this distance. So let's see. Bang. Not bad. I've got to hand it to the boys in the universal carrier, given the difficulty. I was not counting on them making a hit. Let me make that absolutely clear. But a 5, that would have ruffled the hair of a couple of the Japs over there. So hopefully that's given them something to think about. With that, prep our options. Oh, I'm liking this. I'm liking this. There's some nice terrain coming up to break up the flatness that we're busy advancing over. Now the question is, did we make the right decision? Now, bare few minutes into this engagement, it's already becoming a bit clear to me. I don't know what was going through the sergeant's head at this time. Sorry, the other sergeant's head at this time. But these aren't quite the usual motley of half-starved, half-defeated Japs that we'd been led to expect on this trail. And the first clue we had that something was not right about all this was that instead of holding their ground, like 99% of them did until we dug them out or killed them, or they just fell over from dengue fever or something, is that this lot, in contrast to that, they were actually moving towards us. Maybe not the whole bunch of them, but in the distance, I suddenly saw a couple of them running in our direction. Now, this is really unusual behavior. Now, if you're fighting the Japanese in 1941, 42, then it's fairly standard behavior. It's basically the sign that the force in front of you is sending a couple of scouts to sniff out exactly what they're dealing with. And as you know, true to form, I've got to hand it to the Japanese. They like their procedures. The standard group of two men moving forward in the role of scouts, which was very interesting. That usually presages an advance, and I'm beginning to like this even less. See my previous comments on many occasions about Japanese bayonets and the distance that I would rather have between them and my good self. But aside from that, nothing else seemed to occur. There might seem to have been a bit of activity in the distance, but I couldn't really tell what it was. Little did I know at the time that while a couple of their men were running forward, the rest of the Japanese, realizing that the Commonwealth were already throwing another unit in their direction, were busy fortifying their position while they tried to figure out just what exactly they were dealing with. Had I known this, of course, I would have come up with some sort of old sports injury excuse and found a good reason to fall back. But anyway, it would look bad in front of the lads, so onwards we pressed. Now, not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. As our boys press on, we're very, very glad to find something coming up to break up the monotony of this muddy plain. So our group, the maneuver group over here, decides they're going to chuck themselves into some brush. My bunch decide we're going to head for a hill to get some elevation, and some defensive terrain never helps. Sorry, did I say it never helps? It always helps. What am I talking about? Foolish boy. Lastly, despite the impressiveness of that shot with the boy's anti-tank rifle, the Universal Carrier decides it doesn't really want to be left behind by the infantry it's meant to be supporting. So they're going to trundle up forward to join us. Rumble, rumble, clatter, clatter. Really subtle, you know, the kind of thing you want when you're sneaking up on your enemy. And we shall see what our options are. That's not too bad. Meanwhile, on the other side of the hill, those two distant figures were still moving cautiously towards us. But now there was another development, because one of the lads, I think it was the corporal in the squad, I can't really remember, he was feeling a tiny bit eagle-eyed, and he grabbed the sergeant's sleeve because he could swear he could see movement off to our right. Now this was a bit of a worrying development too, because to add to my growing paranoia, I'm already worried about the fact that these Japanese scouts are moving towards us. But it now looks like that they're slowly beginning to develop one of their classic pincer attacks. And again, this is not a good sign, because these are supposed to be the defeated remnants of the Impal and Kohima army. What the deuce are they doing advancing like it's the spring of 1942 all over again? Unless these could be reinforcements. I do not like this thought. I do not like it at all. But I will say one thing, at least so far, at the risk of cursing us all, there is no sign of any reinforcements. Now, looking at our options, they're not looking too bad. There's some lovely terrain that, due to local knowledge, it would be very satisfying to dump on the advancing Japanese. Good possibility they've not been here all that longer than we have, but then you never know. They might have actually come up this way on their way to Impal and Kohima. It's difficult to know, but then we also have this rather lovely firing card. And from this vantage point here on the hill, my lot can see them rather well at range 2. But we only have 6 firepower, so that's not... We can see them, we can aim at them, but we can't really land a bead on them, which is deeply frustrating. So what we are going to do is dump these on them. What I'm going to have happen, and what I like the thought of, is that what we can see from the hill, but the 2 Japanese scouts cannot see, is that they are about to blunder into a marsh. Now they see this, and they instantly decide they don't like the look of it, so they're going to adjust their course a bit. I forgot to flip their marker from 0 to relative range 1, so let's just say I've put that back to 0. They've changed direction to skirt the marsh because they don't want anything to do with that lot. Unfortunately, their other bunch, who've clearly been spotted by one of our other units, have wandered straight into an obstruction, which, given that we're only just moving into this sector ourselves, we can't really claim credit for. But whatever it was originally, they've walked right into it, and it's going to cause them some problems while they disentangle themselves. This, of course, makes me an extremely happy bunny because they are prime targets while this is going on. So happy days. Now, lovely to have a buildings card, but in this scenario, while jungle rules do not apply because we're in relatively open ground, can't use these till the first 5 building cards have been discarded or drawn as a random number check. So I'm going to try to hang on to that as long as I can, but I'm not counting on being able to keep it. Meanwhile, over on the Japanese side of things, those scouts have decided that it's a bit dicey out here, so they are likewise going to throw themselves into a bit of brush while they consider their next move. But very little else is going to happen because, like us, the Japanese frustratingly are not really within range for conventional firepower. Sorry, didn't mean to show you their cards. That's taken away a bit of the drama, hasn't it? And that lot over there are a bit stuck. They've run up against their physical obstacle, their obstruction, and they're trying to figure out a way round it. But at the moment, they don't really have any decent options. So that's going to sort it for them. What are we going to do now? We've got a much weaker firing card, which I'm quite tempted to have the boys on the left use, because they've got enough firepower factors, and as there's only 2 Japanese over there, it might be worth trying to drive them off. So the first infantry-based shooting of the game is going to start. Our 4 brave lads on the left over there are going to open up. They generate a firepower of 1, which is negated by the brush that those 2 are hiding in. You cowards! Come out and fight like samurai! No? No? Drat, they're not as stupid as I was hoping. Just to make matters even worse, not only are they hiding in the brush, but they're very well concealed. I shouldn't be surprised. The Japanese are masters at this sort of thing. So our final firepower strength is -1. Pooh. Let's try the first one. Oh, a 3. Well, despite everything, we keep his head down. Good shooting, my boys, good shooting. The other one's a bit less convinced, but never mind, we've upset his mate, so that's a start. I've just thought of a very good use for this building card. The universal carrier can't shoot worth a damn while it's on the move, so I'm going to play this face down as an open ground card. So with the shooting starting, the good old carrier's just coasting to a halt and trying to find itself a target. Now, in the meantime, we can't do very much up here, but with my self-preservation hat on, as all the other groups have taken an action, I gently suggest to the sergeant that maybe we should consider finding better cover while we're waiting on events. And much to my surprise, he agrees. So we all start digging in or trying to find something. Unfortunately, even with my usual amazing sense of how to hide myself from the enemy, we do not succeed. So we're still on the hill, but we haven't entrenched. Sigh. Back up there. Well, I'm sorry to say, despite our optimistic start, the Japanese on our left, or at least the one who we surprised by shooting at him, is utterly unconvinced in the long term by our firing and manages to rally himself. Well, that's not brilliant. I was hoping to chase the bounder off. Never mind. That group in the centre are content to just sit there and wait on events. But worse news for us, the ones on our right have figured out a way round the obstacle and are resuming their advance. Again, I don't like the idea of a number of heavily armed Japanese heading in my direction, so we're going to have to do something to try and stop them. What are our options? Actually, they're not great, to be honest. No, that's not brilliant at all. I'm going to take a bit of a chance. I mean, I could waste time trying to fire with the anti-tank rifle from the Bren carrier, but the universal carrier, but it's a bit of a waste of time, really. I think I will take a risk and chuck those two cards out because we're allowed 2 discards. Okay, let's see what we can do next turn. Now over to the Japanese. Not an awful lot is going to happen unless... No, they're all still out of range, except the 2 scouts over here decide they quite like the idea of trying to dig in, but they're no more successful than us on the hill. Now, unfortunately for me, this group have realised they're a nice fat target, and there's obviously a few more Commonwealth bods in the area than they first suspected. So they're going to dive into some brush as well while they consider their next move. Plus, now that they're no longer firing, if they're within range, which they are, it makes their shooting a heck of a lot more effective. Oh dear. So much for an easy afternoon clearing the road. I don't have great options, but I would like to try clearing those 2 idiots on our left again. Now, unfortunately for me, same modifiers as last time, it's turned into a 0 and then a -1 because they are very good at keeping their heads down. First one, we don't hit him. Second one, a -3, so nope, we are way off. We can barely see them. And the only other thing I'm going to attempt to do is... Oh, actually... with my universal carrier moving, we lost our target acquired advantage. I wonder... It might be a bit of a waste, but do I actually want to try potting one of those Japanese with the anti-tank rifle again? No, it's not worth it. It would only make me feel better, and it would probably just waste a perfectly good firing card. So those of us on the hill are going to keep trying to dig in, and we do it. We got a 0, which is exactly what we want. And you know what? There's nothing like finding a convenient dip in the ground to chuck yourself into. Just get that little bit more cover from the opposition, and I'm feeling much happier already. Now, if only those Japanese opposite us would just do the decent thing and surrender, then we'd all be fine. Downside, we might have to shoot a couple of them to persuade them that this is a good idea. So meanwhile, speaking of the opposition, that group over there are going to try to dig in again. They still fail. This is very considerate of them. Center group isn't going to do anything. However, the group on our right, having got quite close to us, are going to attempt to drive us off our hill through the medium of gunfire. Now, good thing we're on a hill and we're entrenched, so that reduces their fire strength to 0. But just because I am rather paranoid, I'm going to top it with a card which the British can use, because they can use US or German options on the split cards. I'm going to make it -2 just to be really mean, because of course this is my tender epidermis we're talking about here. So I'll move across and see what the results of the shooting are. They miss our sergeant. They miss the corporal. They miss our Bren gunner. Excellent. They miss Private Hodge over there. And most importantly, they miss me. I mean, to be honest, that's the only one I'm really worried about, but you know. So I'm very thrilled by this. The Japanese obviously are not, but I don't care what they think. And so that ends their round, and it's back to us. Question is what to do. We don't really have any great options. In this scenario, minefields are nothing better than cower cards, so I'm going to discard that and see if we can free up any better options. Maybe we can. Maybe we can. But we'll just have to be patient and hope the Japanese don't do anything horrible to us in the meantime. Over on our left, their scouts are going to continue their interminable efforts to, oh drat, they've just gone and entrenched themselves. That's going to make them just that teensy bit harder to dig out of that position. Not handy when we're trying to elbow them aside. Center group is going to sit pretty where they are, but the group on the right is going to have another pop at us, cheeky fellows. I bet you it's because they've spotted me among that group. Obviously, target the war hero, why don't you? But thankfully, this is a weaker fusillade of fire, so they've actually started off with a -1. And I'm going to dash their hopes even further by making it -2 again. So everybody keep your heads down. Sergeant, you're fine. Corporal, you're fine. Machine gunner, yep, you're all right. Private, ooh, that was close. That bullet sang right past him. Not liking this. And I'm definitely fine. Happy days. Happy days. Right, it really is about time we got some payback. But our options aren't brilliant, so we can't really draw bead on them where we are. I think it's going to have to be up to us to try and break the deadlock. So I'm going to do the really simple thing and order people forward. Actually, no. I whisper a couple of bits of tactical advice to the sergeant, who seemingly on account of my spurious reputation seems to agree it's a good idea. And he waves his left flank group forward. Now, this is great because it's always nice when people are moving forward who are not you. I mean, they might get the credit for any wins that ensue, but as far as I'm concerned, emerging to be able to talk about a win at the end of the battle makes it worth it. So they're heading off through the brush, trying to close in with the Japanese over there. The rest of us, because we simply don't have any great options at the moment, are just going to catch a breather for a minute and see what happens. Now, is our movement on the left flank going to trigger any Japanese reply? Well, it doesn't from the 2 scouts, but unfortunately for us, it does from their center group, who have finally spotted a target they can't resist. So they've got enough firepower factors to use this, and they've got a fire strength of 2. It's upped to 3 because we're moving, reduced back to 2 because we're moving through the brush. And unfortunately, we don't have any concealment cards, so this could be painful. Watch out, lads. So they open fire, misses the first chap, misses the second, misses the third, and ooh, okay, pins the last fellow, or at least gets him to keep his head down, but that's not too problematic. They're still moving forward and they're retaining their cohesion. That could have been a lot worse. I could make so many comments about myopic Japanese and their terrible marksmanship, but I know what will happen if I do. One of them will get very close to landing one between my eyes, and I don't really want that to happen. So the final thing that'll occur is that group over there is going to attempt to dig in and fails. Right, back to us. This is not very fun. Oh, that's a rally 6 card. He's a bit jittery, that fellow. He's got the lowest morale in the group. I noticed him earlier when we were in the carrier. He was the one biting his fingernails and other disgusting habits and giving off that he was nervous. And he looks like the sort of namby-pamby who'd cut and run. I mean, there's probably more than one of those in the squad, but he bears watching. The only problem is, do we really want to waste a Rally 6 card on him? And we have no idea whether the Japanese still have a good lineup or a good line of sight to these fellows. So I don't know. I think let's err on the side of extreme, possibly excessive caution and play that card just to help him recover. Come on, man, find your nerve, dig deep. So they press on. What about the carrier? Is it in a position to do anything useful? It's at relative range 2 to that group now, and it generates 4 machine gun points. Do you know what? Just for the sake of providing a distraction, I think that thing should spray that group with admittedly fairly ineffective machine gun fire, but it'll give them something to think about. So firepower of 1 reduced to 0 by their cover. And unfortunately for me, because they're not wanting to take any chances either, further reduced to -3 by the excellent cover they've found themselves. So the Bren gunner in the universal carrier blazes away enthusiastically, and that wasn't too bad, but with their cover, he is not hitting a whole lot of anything. Nope. They get through a full magazine firing really enthusiastically. I think the Japanese are quite underwhelmed by this, but never mind. But while they're busy doing that, it gives us the chance to do something very uncharacteristic. And I need to point out at this stage that I thoroughly disapprove. But the sergeant waves us forward, the lunatic. He has us streaming down the hill to get to grips with the Japanese. I think this is an absolutely god-awful idea. But you know what the penalty to reputation is if you're visibly hanging back while everyone is moving forward. So with deep reluctance and glowering at the fool and hoping he catches one for his poor tactical decision making, I follow behind the others as we stream down the hill. Now, fortunately for us, the Japanese are not really in a position to do anything about this. So the only thing that's going to happen is that group over there is going to be busy trying to dig in, which they fail to do. They are going to discard this because it's an advantage the Japanese have that they can discard scenario cower cards no matter what. Something about them being terribly brave and forward and thrusting and not having anything to do with this wimpy cowering stuff. I can't say I identify with this, really. Perfectly admirable, but no. Complete insanity. Now, I'm going to be hugely generous only because nominally us on the right are a tiny bit braver than the group on the left. we're going to be really considerate and let them have the hill. So our lads rush up to the crest of the hill, find it's a pretty decent position. Now we are once more in danger of leaving that universal carrier behind. So again, seeing that we're all dashing forward, perhaps with more warmth than prudence, the thing's engine coughs into life once more. Well, I suppose they've left it idling, really, but whatever. It makes loud, disgusting, badly maintained noises and starts chugging and clanking frantically after us. Meanwhile, my lot are still dashing down the hill like a bunch of idiots. I'm not entirely sure what we're hoping to achieve here, but it better be something good. Otherwise, it's going into my report. At least we have some rally cards, so it's not all that bad. As for the Japanese, I think they've been waiting anxiously for us to do something stupid like this. So they are going to begin with their central group has three equidistant approaching groups of Brits to try their hand with. Two of them manoeuvring fairly out in the open and one on the crest of a hill. So it's a nice selection of targets there. And the relative range is 2. So they have, ouch, they get a lot of firepower from that group there. So what they are going to do is open up with this group. And they're going to try and knock off our lads on the hill because they represent the most immediate threat because they've stopped running and they're in a good position to start shooting. If we try to fire, we'll be shooting from the hip. And if that thing tries to fire while it's underway, well, good luck, to be honest. It's jolting and bouncing around like a bronco, as the Yanks would have it. So they turn their guns on this group and they've got a firepower of 3 there. Reduced to 2 by the fact that our boys are on the hill. But we've got nothing to block them with, so ouch, this could be painful. So, oh dear, that's a total of 5. So that first unfortunate, he isn't hit, but he hugs the ground because quite frankly, this is scary. And honestly, I can't say I blame him. Shots go a bit wild on the next man. And the next. But not with the last one. Mr. Jittery over there is proving my powers of observation correct as he hugs the ground once more and starts making little whimpering noises that I may recognize, but only because I'm a sympathetic listener. So that's the main group. And I think for the moment, the final group is just going to try to dig in again. We're moving towards them, so they're quite happy with this. But they still fail, which is considerate of them. Maybe they're itching to run at us. Maybe they should. Maybe we should stop running, Sergeant. Just a suggestion from one Sarge to another. Maybe we should stop running and let them run towards us. How do you feel about this? No, I didn't think so. Never mind, though. The group on the hill, once they grow accustomed to the burst of Japanese counterfire, are starting to get their confidence back. They've just rallied. The universal carrier is still clattering forward. Can't really draw bead on any of its opponents at the moment, but hopefully we'll get there. And we're still dashing down the hill. Oh dear. Will this slope never come to an end? Right, over on the Japanese side, they've gone quiet again. Sorry, I just realised I've broken the tension again by doing that. Didn't mean to. Those two groups are just going to stay... Oh no, they're not actually. The scouts are going to take advantage of this lull to move forward. They're going to try and advance into the position they wanted to occupy right at the start of the scenario. And they're hoping that they can just do a quick dash forward The group over there are going to try and entrench again, and they finally do it. Oh dear. I was hoping their patience wouldn't be rewarded with success, but it looks like they've finally found a nice comfortable spot to stay under cover in. And the Japanese will discard that using their cower card discard advantage. So we have a whole ton of cards that we probably can't use. Oh, actually, I say that, our gang on the hill can have a pop at those two now that they're hoving into closer range. So firepower of 2, modified to 3 because they're on a hill, up to 4 because the enemy's moving, but back down to 3 because they're in brush. And the Japanese aren't going to play any concealment cards, so let's blaze away. So chap on the left, that pins him, that's nice. And another building is taken out of the card mix. We'll be able to use buildings soon, this is nice. Second chap, nope, we miss him by a mile. And that will be it for the rest of my boys. Let's just pray we get something. Oh, thank God, another hill. That's exactly what we've been wanting. Hurrah! Let's just hope we live long enough to enjoy it. On the Japanese side, they're still pressing forward, although, like me, they're a bit casualty averse, so they're going to use that card to resuscitate their man. So they're still pressing forward. No firing from the center, much to our relief, but the Japanese feel that they might soon be ready to try another. In fact, no, what they're going to do, they're getting a bit fed up of only taking the occasional pot shots. So they are going to bring their center group forward as well. They're going to advance. It's starting to look like this day is going to be far more interesting than I thought, and in ways that I really, really did not want. All I want to do is get to Palel in one piece, and then beyond it in one piece. Darn it. Is that really too much to ask? So anyway, with rather a lot of Japanese advancing towards us, it's time to reveal another British advantage, and that is the good old marksmanship rule. So thanks to the British being able to play one card higher than 1 point of firepower higher than what the group generates. That's a terrible way of wording it, but you'll see what I mean. On account of our army's emphasis on musketry and straight shooting, a group that generates 8 firepower points is allowed to play, for example, a 9 firepower card. And we are going to do this, and we are also going to target that group of Japanese in the center. So firepower of 3, 4 because these fine boys are up on the hill, modified to 5 because they're moving in the open. And much to our great delight, the Japanese have no cover card or concealment cards to play. So let's do this. Firepower of 5. Oof! The first Jap to fall is their sergeant. Nice. Ooh, and the corporal goes down. Fantastic. We have just decapitated their leadership in one volley. Unfortunately, the consideration stops there. We sadly don't take the head off their machine gunner, but he's definitely looking discombobulated. No effect on the slightly more... I'll just move these guys up so it's easier to see them. No effect on that fellow there. He's obviously very brave. Ooh, that's a good one. And that matches his killed in action KIA rating. So is he wounded? Nope, he is killed. Okay, I'm happy with that. And the last chap, he is, I say merely, he is pinned, or at least he's severely worried by what's happening. So that was marvellous. They came on all brave and confident, as they have an unfortunate tendency to do, and we gave them what for. Well done, boys over on the hill. Well done. Now, what can the rest of us do to follow this up? Well, this thing's still rattling and clanking, towards them with murderous intent, but little else. And on our side, I think if we want to do any decent shooting, we're going to have to stop jogging. And to be perfectly honest, the whole stop jogging bit sounds good to me. I'm not quite as fit as I was when I was a private. So we're going to stop jogging and start taking up a decent firing position. And that is the end of a very satisfying turn. I can't say my foul mood has completely left me by this point, but seeing a couple of the Tojos go over like 9 pins is certainly a good fillip to the morale of this bluff old warrior. Even if I had no hand in it myself, but best victories that way. Sorry, I've just done it again, shown you the opposition's hand. Again, so much for the suspense. Sorry, guys. So, the Japanese are coming on. Now, despite the losses they've suffered, they don't seem overly phased because the two who were looking a bit nervous have rallied themselves already. And judging by the battle cries, if anything, they're wanting revenge now. So that we might have just poked a stick into a hornet's nest. I'm not too sure. But otherwise, they're going to wait on events. Actually, no, they're not. This is going to turn into a general advance. We've made them angry now. And the one thing you can count on the Japanese to do when they're angry is come straight at you. So here they come, especially as it's obvious that we're not moving towards them anymore, so they're going to have to come and get us. So it's getting a little bit tense now, boys, but we have the advantage of high ground, generally speaking, and we've already shaved the numbers down a tiny bit. Can we hit them again from up here? We've got 8 firepower factors. No, even we can't do that well. He can't do very much. What about you lot? Oh gosh, the relative range is really close there now. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16. Oh, blimey, we could cut some holes in that group on the right. I'm going to give in to hubris now because I think the Japanese are getting close to cracking. Only because they've lost their leaders, not because of the number of men they've lost. So, encouraged by their success, the blokes on the left are going to go in there, see if they can sort them out. The universal carrier is still pleasing itself over on that side. But over here on the hill, we're going to see if we can wipe out that group on the right. So we generate 6 firepower. It's up to 7 because we're on a hill, 8 because they're moving, but back down to 7 because they're moving through the brush. So we give them a taste of disciplined Commonwealth fire. Amazingly, I saw one of them crumple, and I thought rather hopefully that he would be down, but no, he was just pinned. The next chap was definitely taken care of. One next to him. No, that is just a pin. Actually, the word pin is rather wasted on the Japanese. I don't think it's really in their vocabulary. That's a pin as well. Oh, don't tell me we're only going to bag one of them with that excellent shooting, if I don't say so myself. Yeah, and so it proves. Our superbly aimed fire, or so I thought, takes down one of them, but doesn't really seem to have bothered the others. Well, that was rather unfortunate. I was hoping for some better results there, but never mind. Never mind. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. For their part, the Japanese are going to get a bit desperate. They are going to discard 2 cards and draw 2 in the hope of getting some better options. I'm beginning to get concerned, given their proximity, that we might be about to face a banzai charge. And I suspect, in game terms, they're just scrabbling around for the movement cards they need. Oh, wait, no, they can't. No, because their leaders are dead. No, they're going to have to go to ground or do something else. Speaking of going to ground, I think it's high time that our fellows stopped being vulnerable. They are benefiting from the hill as they move, but as the range is dropping appreciably, they're going to chuck themselves into those woods. The universal carrier is going to drive into some brush. Now, it might seem a weird, unnecessary thing for I was going to grace it by calling it an armoured vehicle, but a nominally armoured vehicle to do. But actually, it's a good idea for the carrier to try and sort of, make itself as inconspicuous as that thing can, because it is very vulnerable to being shot at. Meanwhile, over on our side of things, because we generate 16 firepower, I'm going to use our advantage to play this incredibly brutal card, which gives us 8 firepower factors, which is probably going to wipe them out. But do you know what? I want an easy afternoon, so that's what's going to happen. The Japanese do not play any concealment cards, so that is a panic. He legs it. You can tell it's October 1944. I just saw a Japanese soldier run away. Don't see that very often. That one begins to, or thematically, you could say he decides to do a heroic suicidal charge, but is cut down. The next one, another building card, is killed outright as well. And the last one in that group, final building card, he ends up retreating as well. 2 Japanese run away. This is a thing unheard of, but given that these fellows were running directly at my position, I think I am quite relieved, let's put it that way. So there we go. And also, because of the number of buildings cards that have been taken out the game now, we can actually advance beyond and occupy the village. So happy days. So on that fabulous note, I will refill our hand. Lovely stuff. Now, those of you who play up front a lot but may not have played the Japanese all that often are probably probably wondering why their squad hasn't broken yet. And that's because, unlike pretty much every other nationality in this game, the Japanese do not break when they suffer 50% losses. You need to crush them to the tune of 75% or better. And given they started with a 13-man squad, as far as they're concerned, having 5 men still in action is plenty. So this is far from over. But they do realise they've got to conserve their numbers a bit now that they've been whittled down so badly. So their more vulnerable troops are going to get into, and these are the lower morale guys, are going to get into cover as quickly as they can. And these guys with their higher morale are just going to hope for the best, really, until they can get a decent card. They were evidently angling for some kind of general advance, possibly a banzai charge while their sergeant and corporal were still alive, but it's obviously not happening for them now. So, back to the Commonwealth. The chaps in the woods can't really draw bead on anybody. And neither can that dratted carrier, which is a bit useless. How well can we see Group B? Relative range is 3. 11. Oh no, that's terrible. We can't see a darn thing. I think we're just going to discard these slightly less useful cards and hope we get something that we can actually make use of. The Japanese, for their part, believe it or not, they still have a stab at winning this scenario, but it's a big stab. I've done it again. Sorry, guys. They don't have that many options, so the group that's in cover is going to try to push forward, because if they can still achieve the victory conditions before we do, or at least block us from doing it, then they win the game. Now, this late in the war, with us advancing, I really do not want any of that sort of complication. And rather annoyingly for me, my group here was so close to advancing and achieving the victory conditions, but they've pushed in front of us just at the right moment for them to keep us at arm's length. So because it's relative range 5, we're virtually toe to toe. We have to clear them out of the way if we want to get anywhere and win, unless I, of course, advance with another group. Let's see what our options are. So we now generate 12 firepower from that distance. Maybe we can blast them out of the way. I've got a lot of firing cards. So yeah, my group on the left are going to subject them to a face full of fire because, yes, they are in our way and we want to get through and open up the road. Thank you very much. So firepower of 5, up to 6 because they're moving, but down to 4 because of the wall. And we blaze away at them. The first one's pinned. Oh no. Some prat's allowed his weapon to break. That's embarrassing. You're all carrying Enfields. It's not like the things malfunction at the drop of a hat. So four men in the group. Position number is 2. Well, I am going to take that man's name because that's just unacceptable. Honestly. Suffering a weapon malfunction in the presence of the enemy. Not cool. What about the carrier? It's up to relative range 4 now, which gives it 6 firepower points. That's not great, but it's going to have a pop at that group as well. So firepower of 2, up to 3 because they're moving, back down to 2 because they're behind a wall, but it's from an oblique angle. So first shot, just enough to panic the man. So the chap who's having a bit of a rough day decides he's had enough. And his friend is pinned. They could be very close to breaking now. In fact, I think, at the risk of cursing myself, we might have this one in the bag, fellows. Let's see. What about us? What can we do? Well, we can certainly use that firing card on the group in the middle. Never mind achieving the victory point. Let's be a bit, the victory range chit. Let's be yahoos about this and just blow them away from here. So firepower of 4 for my group. 5 because we're on a hill and 6 because they're advancing. They have no cover cards. So first one is pinned again. Second one is fine, remarkably. And the last one is fine too. God, they've got nerves of pure steel, these people. So slightly disappointed, I refill my hand. And let's see what the Japanese do. Now, their options are not overly brilliant. They're going to play a hero card on him because they've got very few choices at the moment. And that is actually going to be it. So we may have a chance at achieving something. Our group over here is going to try desperately to get rid of him because the odds are so good. So firepower of 4, with all the modifiers, it goes up. It's basically 3, But then the Japanese make it 2 by doing that, so not so good after all. Nope, we don't get anywhere near him. That's a pity. I'm going to take a huge risk at this point because things seem to be going so well. I am going to chance going forward, and you can tell that it's going exceptionally well because even I feel good about this one. What could possibly go wrong at this stage, right? Right? We've got all this lovely terrain to move into. I mean, it's not like they could pull a mirror. Shut up, sir. Shut up, Andrew. Shut up. And so here we go. That's our turn done. What about the Japanese? They are still desperately short of options, so nothing is going to happen from their side. They're caught very badly without decent cards. And if they play an open ground card just to stop moving at this distance, it's possibly as much of a death sentence. They're just as well off, or their chances are just as good if they hold out for decent terrain. These fellows over here are going to take a breather, but that chap over there is going to try and fix his rifle, which he does. Nice. Universal Carrier's quite happy where it is. And my lot are going to have the satisfaction of entering the village. Woohoo! Probably one of the few buildings still standing. Well, it's official. This tiny, tiny corner of eastern India has just been liberated. Sort of. The Japanese are still rather desperate, so they're just going to discard and refill their hand. We are now seriously hoping that a bloodless victory will be ours. We'll do a soften up with, let's give the Universal Carrier a chance. So firepower of 1, which is kept at 1 by the modifiers. But the Japanese really want that guy to live, so they're going to make it a -2, which is effective. We don't get anywhere near him. However, the group directly facing him, or no, shall I do this somewhat differently? Actually, no, I'm going to give my group the honor of finishing this. So total firepower of 6, and we're going to try and wipe out their main group. He is pinned. Will someone just please kill that man? He is not even bothered. That last chap on the end unfortunately buys it. And with that, for all the superb courage they have shown, the Japanese attack falters and crumbles because we have achieved our 75%. So a very, very brave attempt and an incredible bloodless victory for us. Thank goodness. That could have turned rather nasty. As we sink to the ground exhausted, because to be honest, it's an incredibly hot day. It's October in the Burma-Indian frontier, but you know, even with the threat of the monsoon making it